Is success a process and not a status? Is prosperity also a process and not a status? Are you living the exact life that at one time you only dreamt of? And do you have an obsessive passion to achieve those dreams? Let's take a look together. This is prosperity and something greater. My guest today is Dr. John Guiliana. Now, John is a podiatrist who I met early in my career serving podiatrists. And from the first moment I met him, I could tell that John was someone special, brilliant in his thinking, and so capable in sharing what he has learned with so many others. You know, as we teach and coach doctors in best practices, there are many metrics and terms that John developed and then shared with his colleagues that has really become canon with us. And as you'll hear, my association with John has influenced me personally in a very positive and extremely profound way. Let's meet him, John Guiliana. Okay, well, John Guiliana, my friend, welcome to the podcast. It's great to have you with me today.
Thank you, Rem. It's great to be here as always.
Well, John, I'm really looking forward to having our discussion about prosperity and really sort of how you see it and your journey. And one of the reasons is, well, first of all, I've known you for so long. You're one of the first people that I met also many years ago in podiatry, and you've always been such a support and such a friend and so interested in helping me because I always perceived that you thought I was helping your colleagues. And it's just been such a great journey. But a few years ago, I asked you if you would keynote the Top Practices Summit. And you said, sure, I'd be happy to do that. And then, we talked about what it was and what we were going to talk about. And you really got it. You made it personal and you told sort of about your life journey and tapped at some of what we're going to talk about today a little bit. But I learned a lot from you that day when you shared that with all of our folks. And I've told you before, several of the things that we've talked about over the years, relative to how we sort of approach helping launch our children and all the rest of that stuff. Probably got some of the best advice from you that I've ever had. And it has had a tremendous, you weren't even trying to advise me. You're just telling me what you do. So you didn't know you were giving me the best advice I ever got in some cases, but it's impacted my life and very much in making it richer and more prosperous.
I'm glad, man. Thank you.
For me and my family. So just a delight to have you here. So John, let's just jump into this. How do you define prosperity for you?
Well, I sort of can place prosperity in the same class as success. Not that I think it's equivalent, but follow me, if you will, on how I think about these two terms. To me, prosperity is something that you can achieve, but it's a status. It's a process, not a status. So, for example, the same as with success, it's a process. It's not a status. And by that, I mean, I don't know anybody who is successful. I know lots of people who live life successfully because it's an ongoing process. So prosperity is a little bit different than success, I suppose. I would say that it's achieved by living the exact life that you at one time only dreamt of. And then you set goals to move towards. And then you eventually develop an obsessive passion for achieving. When you reach that point of obsessive passion, that's when I think you can proclaim prosperity. And notice, Rem, that neither in success or prosperity did I even use the word money, because I think a lot of people think of money first. And to me, the money is actually a byproduct of all of that. figuring out what you dream your life can be, setting goals to become that, then developing an obsessive passion for that is what defines prosperity to me.
I love that obsessive passion. That is really well said. It just harkens back to Napoleon Hill saying that you need to have a burning desire.
Mm-hmm.
And a burning desire is very different from, I would like to do that, or I want to do that. I'm going to do that. It's, I resolve. I will not let this, an obsessive passion for that. And I agree with you so much. I try to do a little research and figure out, what do people think prosperity is, and wealth is in there. It's a component, but it's not where you start. I think you end up with a very hollow victory if that's where you start, because all that comes with it. So I couldn't agree with you more. So John, on your journey, what was the defining moment or event that really brought you to your career path? And, just sort of let folks know a bit of your story. I remember when you did the keynote speech, I said, John, that was fantastic. You should really do that in some other venues. And you said, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it, because I'm never going to do that talk again. And so here I am dragging you back. It's just like Al Pacino. Just when I thought I was out,
That's
they
when I
pulled
thought
me
I was
back
out.
in. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was indeed the first time that anybody truly ever heard my journey, as you put it. Most people never had a clue that, I went through my life as a D plus student. And when you ask about a defining moment, Rem, so just to share the highlights of that keynote presentation, I was a D plus student, and there wasn't a college in the world that was interested in having me. And it was only through both sheer luck and the art of negotiation that I was able to get myself into college, because remember, prosperity to me has that initial phase of having a dream. And my dream was always to be a pharmacist. And, I'd be lucky if I was a candlestick maker with the grades that I had, let alone being able to get into any pharmacy school. But through some creative negotiations, because I had absolutely nothing to lose by doing so, and through just sheer luck, I was able to get into a pharmacy school. And the turning point was in high school, when there was a day that my guidance counselor called my parents into the guidance office, because we were going through the process of applying to colleges. And my guidance counselor looked at my parents and said, please don't waste any money or time trying to send your boy to college, because he really is not going to make it. We should just look for a job for him and be happy with that. I think that was the turning point. When I heard that, I realized I knew the switch could always be turned on. It was a manual thing, not an automatic thing. I had other interests and focus in high school, and I know that the D plus was not what I could possibly achieve anytime I wanted to. I could turn that switch on, and ultimately went to pharmacy school, went to podiatry school, went on for a master's in business management, all with straight A's. So I think the turning point was that guidance counselor office. She's no longer with us, unfortunately, because I think she was about 80 years old then, but I'd love to speak to her at this point if I could.
Now and again, the folks that know you and have learned from you for all of the effort and the work you've done in teaching and mentoring in your profession for so long, they're hearing this, many of them now for the first time, and thinking, you've got to be kidding me. I thought he was always at the top and, just destined to be who he is. And it just goes to show, at any moment, you can turn and become obsessively passionate.
Yeah.
Change the narrative now. No matter where you are, you can do it right now. It's a decision.
Exactly.
That's just impressive. Okay, John, we all have challenges. We all have obstacles that we face. Can you share what can trip you up on your daily journey?
Well, as you know, an executive vice president of a company that owns an electronic health record, TrackNet, I suppose that if you knew that, even if you didn't know that industry, I think everybody can imagine that if you're in the business of technology, particularly an electronic health record, you're sort of like that dentist that nobody likes to see, nobody likes to engage with. It's something that is intrusive to practices, no matter what technology you're talking about. There's very few physicians that I can speak of, no matter what electronic health records they're using, that would rather use their electronic health record as opposed to other methods. So I guess the thing that can trip me up, and it's not common, but it's trying to do the most good for the most customers. You have one customer who might complain about something that they would like to see, but it's not there. But if you do that, then it affects other customers adversely. So it's a balancing act of trying to do the most good for the most colleagues. And I think that's the biggest challenge that I face on a daily basis.
Business is messy, and I don't think people realize that. That's why we spend so much time in top practices teaching marketing methods and systems, management methods and systems to bring order to all of the chaos. But the thing we all have to remember is the chaos continues. The stink bombs continue. The problem continues. You're just organized better and can handle it more. And then I think it comes back to really prioritizing the fact that we can do this, we can handle this. And you, instead of allowing it to get inside of you and start to eat at you, which is what happens to people in business, their businesses just start to chew them up if they don't understand that we'll be fine. This will pass.
Yeah.
Let's just do our best and do right. And it all shall work out. Makes sense?
Agree. Yeah. We use such a system to help bring some order to that organized chaos. I mean, we at Nemo Health, we use the Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS, which does help bring some order to any of those challenges.
Yeah, that's a wonderful construct that's been pulled together. The book's Traction, right?
Correct.
What's the author's name? Yeah, I know. Traction, folks. And
yeah, a nice Italian man, I know.
That's what I was going to say too. Gino or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So Traction, a great book to read. Okay. So, well, then let me ask you this. What's the top thing you do? What's the top strategy that you use to keep you heading in the right direction and not slipping into old habits?
You mean aside from the obsessive passion, right? Because once you evolve from a D plus student, you never want to go back, obviously. So there's actually not one strategy I can say. There's a number of them, Rem, and I think many of my colleagues will be able to relate to this because they're dealing with challenges on a daily basis. And thinking back of when I was in practice for 28 years, running a group practice, I carried out some of these strategies even to today. The first is something that I think you have taught me and everybody else about, and that's the mindset and how to have the right mindset to tackle any challenges. I've always looked, even as a practitioner, I've always looked at any practice or business challenge as a game. And I have enjoyed the gamemanship of developing strategies. And you probably have heard me talk a lot about how I look at business no differently than a game of chess. It's a challenging game, and you have to have strategies because right around the corner, there's going to be another challenge. And if you know or can watch your opponents move, you're going to know how to deal with that move through your own strategy. So gamemanship is a strategy that I use all the time. And realizing that failure, regardless of what strategy you use, failure is never permanent. So one of the strategies that I've often employed is to make sure that I don't suffer from, even though I'm an analytical person and I like data to make decisions, I don't suffer from analysis paralysis. I jump in knowing that if it doesn't work, it's okay. I'll go back to the drawing board and start over again.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've paid attention to this exact moment here in business. The way I put it is this. I've worked with people that I would call professionals. And here's almost the definition of a professional in my mind. Besides which, I will say, professionals always script it. They always bring an extra battery, an extra camera. If someone's coming and they're a professional, anything, they have backup after backup because they know that stuff is going to break and fail. That's one area. That's what's being prepared. I forget who said this, but professionals script it, amateurs wing it.
Mm-hmm.
But the one thing professionals do, and this is really what I heard you just say, and that is if they have to look at a situation, they have to make a decision. And maybe that decision is like, should I fire this person? Should I promote this person? Should I make this big decision about a purchase or something like that. They gather the facts. I mean, I've worked with people that were really sharp and they would say, all right, well, let's figure out what's going on here. Get the numbers, get the facts. If they don't have enough information, then they may use experts, consultants, someone to help them get the right information. But then there comes a point where they say, okay, yes or no, red or green, go or stop. And they just decide, they just make a decision. Amateurs, which are, many of the people that you and I work with, I mean, nobody was trained. Anybody that you and I work with was not trained to be a top level executive and make decisions, make the adjustments, move on. This is when they get to a decision like, well, maybe it'll get better, or, let's just give it a little time and see. I don't really know. And just kind of hoping it's going to get okay. So amateurs just say, well, she's got this problem or he's got that. I don't know. The real pros they make the calls and they move forward, and they go so much faster and so much farther. And they then fail, like you just said.
Yeah.
But they don't even see it that way, like you just pointed out. Yeah.
You just learn how not to do it if you fail.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. All you either get is a success or a lesson.
Yeah.
And if you don't get either of those, then you are failing. I would agree with that. So, John, the people listening to this podcast, they're interested. We've got a loyal following, and they're interested in achieving their own version of prosperity. So, what advice do you have for folks as they're moving forward for themselves?
Well, I suppose I could recommend to follow my own recipe, thinking back now that people have heard the journey. The first thing you have to do is really define for yourself what prosperity is. You have to define your own version of prosperity, and you have to set your own goals and ambitions. And then I would strongly recommend that you actually visualize it. I'm a big believer, Rem, in visualization. I like to be able to visualize things, which is why most of the people that I work with know that I'm big into charts and graphs and trends and whatnot. But even intangible things like prosperity or where you want to be in 1 year, in 5 years, you really have to visualize that. And ironically, not visualize it with just your eyes. You have to really live it and breathe it. And again, become obsessively passionate about it and internalize it, not just visualizing it with your eyes, and then start living that life. Even though, ironically, you have not achieved it yet, you have to start living it. So, for example, if you want to be wealthy, start living like you're wealthy. And it's amazing how, your psychology will then be able to track down the actual reality of it. Perception becomes the reality eventually. If you want to be successful, start living successfully. So that's the recipe that I would recommend is, defining prosperity for yourself first, visualize and internalize it and become obsessively passionate about it, and then begin living it whether or not you're there yet.
And, that's engaging. That's something I'm extremely interested in these days because I'm personally now for almost a year been very, very intentional about that. But that's engaging your subconscious mind. And that's what you're saying, they talk about the fact that thoughts are things. They actually will magnetically attract things that are similar to them. So if your thoughts are prosperous, your behavior, and you're not suggesting by living wealthy that you go buy a house you can't afford or anything like that.
No,
exactly.
not at all. But you begin to think wealthy, dress like you have money. You do all of these things that are just psychological. And Rem, to your point about the subconscious, one of the books I read early in my journey, I just stumbled upon it by sheer accident. It was known as psycho-cybernetics. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that really hits to your point, and it hits to the point that I'm making, how perception becomes reality. And the book is very interesting. It's actually written by a plastic surgeon back in the 1950s who discovered that women who were coming in for plastic surgery because they had the perception of themselves being ugly or whatever, he would turn them into beautiful people yet they still felt ugly because their perception was always deeply embedded. And the reverse actually is true as well, as what he discovered in his studies from that.
Yeah, and so much of what we are unhappy with ourselves is completely ephemeral. It's just, it means nothing. I mean, there are advertisers have us convinced there's a particular way to look, there's a particular way to be. And so, we try to aspire to that. That's one, by the way, of the silver linings, I think, that is emerging from this COVID-19 crisis that we've all been living through, which is this, excessive materialism and constantly go, 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 get, get. We've all taken this break and said, maybe it really is the small things in life that are most important, that we value, that we wouldn't want to lose. And your subconscious mind, I mean, if you begin to see yourself as a prosperous, happy, healthy, attractive person, people will magically think that as well. And after a period of time, they will behave with you as though you always were that.
Exactly.
Oh, that's who you are. I mean, I think it takes about 3 months for people to forget. Oh, yeah, he wasn't always confident.
Yeah.
You can recast that. I agree with you so much.
Indeed.
And without it, I don't know how you become, prosperous in the way that we're all defining prosperity, which is this level of self-comfort and satisfaction and enjoyment in this life, this very short life that we're all living right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so here's my fun question. I hope you've had a chance to think about this. If you were a toy, any toy at all, what would it be and why?
Yeah, so I heard you ask this question, so I did prepare for this. I actually gave this far more thought than I ever thought I would.
It's
so
like that.
here's one that some are going to be just too darn young to remember, but I would like to be the Magic 8 Ball. Do you
Mm,
remember the Magic 8 Ball?
I own one.
Okay, good. Good. Yeah. So some may be too young to really remember it, but it was an 8 ball, much like a pool ball, or the game of pool, but it was a fortune telling ball. It can prognosticate. And that's what I would like to be, only because one of the things I do enjoy doing is prognosticating, of course, based on data, not just on, sheer happenstance, but I think I'd make a good Magic 8 Ball.
Oh, I love that. And so if you don't know, you should probably Google it, but it was just a big 8 ball and you would ask the question and then you'd shake it and you'd turn it upside down. It just had a multi-sided, it was floating in water
Exactly.
cube and one of them would come up and appear in the window
Yeah,
and
yes,
give you your
no,
answer.
maybe. It was a silly game.
Seems likely.
Right,
Those kinds of
exactly.
things. That's good. Well, and you have been prognosticating, I think, predicting. And I've done a little bit of that myself, especially in the last few months. And when you're in a position where people might be listening to you, that's a very serious endeavor that has to be approached really carefully. And I will say that, I know that your thoughtful, reasoned, very carefully considered little bit of radar that you've been able to provide to your colleagues, I've heard over and over again, has been deeply appreciated by so many of them. So yeah, that's great. A Magic 8 Ball. I like that. That's great. It's fine. Yeah, good one.
What I'm curious, Rem, what have some of the answers been?
Oh, oh my. Oh, they're all over the place. I just talked to John Gould, who's an educator friend of mine. He said Slinky. And it's another one of those maybe you won't remember. And he said he doesn't really know why, except it was so much fun to put a Slinky on the stairs and watch it
Yep.
step on down.
I could hear the music that they used in the TV program.
Slinky to Slinky. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I can too. Exactly. And, but we both kind of noticed that, that's the only trick a Slinky could do. I mean, that was it.
very true.
Other than that, most of you just broke them. But one of my favorites was, not that I have a favorite, but a good one was Dan Buettner, who you'll hear, who's a friend of mine that wrote the Blue Zones and New York Times bestseller. He said a ball because, pretty much anybody can have a ball and they're all over the world in every culture. Most people can get their hands on a ball. And if you have a ball, you got something to do.
Mhm.
And a lot of times you can play a game with other people because almost all the games like that involve some kind of a ball. So, and Tom Foster wanted to be a guitar.
Yeah.
He started learning how to play guitar whenever I met him about 13 years ago. And, he was okay. Now he's really good. The guy practices hard. So that question I have used and I've known for a really long time. It was an icebreaker at something I went to, 35 years ago, I suppose. I've always found it to be a very good question, and I've been delighted what it's popped up.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly to me that it was that much fun of a question. I'm sure the folks that listen to this podcast are anticipating. I wonder what toy he's going to be, sir. She's going to be. So.
Right.
All right. And my last question, my friend, is this is a tough one because I'm asking for one. But if you were going to recommend one great book that we should all be reading, what would it be?
Now, does that include or exclude Podiatry Prosperity, of course?
You're so kind. Let's just assume everybody knows I wrote a book and they may not know you wrote the foreword for my book. So thank you for the nod there. I appreciate it. But let's leave that one off the list.
Okay, very good. And I only get one.
Well, most
Correct?
people have been cheating, by the way.
I won't cheat. I'll pick one. There's been a few along the journey that have helped me. Yeah, and this one is so basic, Rem. It's so basic but we're talking to physicians here, so I'm going to pick this one. And it's an old book, but it never becomes non-applicable. It's Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Mm-hmm. What a fabulous, fabulous book. If you haven't read that, John, why do you recommend that book?
Well, I think it teaches us the skill sets that are necessary to really have an impact on our patients' lives, on how to be influential. And if you think about their compliance as being relative to how influential their healthcare provider is, then you're recognizing the ticket to success here.
Well, that's great. Well, listen, I'm going to extend this because we're not just talking to physicians here. Prosperity and something greater is for absolutely everyone. And I've been finding out that, of course, I'm so well known in podiatry. We've got many, but we've got lots of other folks. So I'm going to ask you to share a couple of the other ones.
Yeah, sure. So the second one, applicable to any profession, any business owner, another oldie but goodie, In Search of Excellence by Tom Peters.
Mm-hmm.
I read that probably right before I went back for my master's early on in my practice career. And I think it really helped me set up a lot of strategies in the office. And I would highly recommend that. In Search of Excellence, Tom Peters.
Got one more?
Well, of course, anything Napoleon Hill. And, that's something that I think you really brought to the spotlight, many years ago for us. Anything Napoleon Hill, like Think and Grow Rich.
Yeah. And I would start with the Keys to Success, the 17 Principles of Personal Achievement, a little $9 book, which kind of updates the original Think and Grow Rich, which was back in the 30s. There's nothing that's had a bigger impact on my life than that. Equal to that would be the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, which I really read first, way back in the 80s. And it changed my life because I've always considered that book to be the blueprint for the mature human being that we really all want to be. So, well, that's great, John. Hey, listen, thank you so much for taking this time. It's been a delight. I will speak to you soon, and I will see you, I know, on the road very soon too.
I hope so.
And when you get out to Vegas, you got to stop by up here at the little desert retreat.
You betcha. Thank you so much, Rem. It's been a pleasure.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Prosperity. Flourishing and thriving. Living the exact life that at one time you only dreamt of. Having an obsessive passion to achieve those dreams and helping others on their journey to happiness and success as you achieve your own. So John was a D-plus student with no prospects for higher education. Doc Dockery started as a hoodlum. John Gould graduated second in his class from the bottom. It's definitely starting to form a pattern here. I can remember getting some bad grades and not working to my potential, so there may be hope for me yet. Well, we are certainly well into prosperity and something even greater. I sincerely hope you're enjoying this as much as I am. Let me know what you think. You can send me an email at rem@toppractices.com. Prosperity is the entire focus of Top Practices. Most doctors are struggling with the business of medicine, and those that aren't truly understand that through association with other successful practitioners, they can take their success to the next level or something greater, like prosperity. Prosperity in business is a function of mindset, marketing, and management. That is our mission at Top Practices. You can find out more about Top Practices, our marketing and management programs for doctors, our workshops, and annual summit at toppractices.com. Until next time, this is Rem Jackson. Smile when you wake up, and then have a really great day. Nothing is more important.